Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaking to the bill.
Gentleman has the floor.
I wasn't going to speak today on this bill until the gentleman from Prince William, I believe, said that it is harder to buy a pack of cigarettes than to vote. But we need to remember voting is a fundamental right that has been denied to many of our citizens for many, many years, whereas smoking cigarettes is not. And I want to tell you a story. I've been doing a lot of genealogical research lately, and I found this book written by my father's step-grandfather called Inching Along. He was a civil rights leader in Centerville, Alabama. He was a teacher. He was the son of slaves who was taught to read. And he decided he was going to register to vote. And he knew that he was going to get a pretty serious test. And so he studied, and he studied, and he studied. And he went down and he registered to vote, and he answered all of their questions right. And the registrar picked up the phone, or turned, sorry, they didn't have phones back then, turned to someone else and said, "We need to get more questions. This blank answered them all right." So for some of us, this is a very personal issue, steeped in history. Now, for a lot of Virginians, particularly the elderly and minority communities, they don't have a form of photo ID government issued. And it's not as simple as going to get an ID from DMV, because for most of those, I believe you need proof of identity, most of which is prior driver's license or a birth certificate. Do you know that for many African Americans over the age of 70, they don't have birth certificates because they weren't born in a hospital, they weren't allowed to be, and the state didn't issue birth certificates. They didn't think they mattered. So if you don't, and it's not just Virginians who were born in Virginia, but I've had a heck of a time finding birth records of ancestors in other states who moved to Virginia because those states didn't give them birth certificates. So when they get here, now it is extremely difficult for them to get a government-issued form of ID. Not because they don't take the time to try to get one, because they don't have the documents to do it. And part of the concern you're hearing from this side of the aisle on this bill is for those people. Because they fought long and hard. Some of them were beaten. Some were killed for the right to vote. And now that they have it, we're going to fight any measure, whether intentional or not. And I don't think this is intentional. We're going to fight any effort that's going to put up a roadblock for those people to keep them from voting because they have fought hard enough for that right themselves. For that reason, I'm voting against this bill and ask you to do the same.